Welcome to Community Scoop, the podcast where we dive into the stories of people shaping Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. I'm Vincent Molden.
And I'm Jared Lippman. Today's guest is Joe Toolan. He is the board chair for Annapolis Pride. Joe is passionate about advocating for equity, visibility, and inclusion. His leadership has helped transform Annapolis Pride from a grassroots effort into one of the region's most recognizable and vibrant celebrations of LGBTQ+ identity.
Whether he's organizing the annual Pride and Festival, elevating youth voices, or pushing for systemic change in health and equity, Joe's commitment to building a stronger, more inclusive Annapolis is clear. We're excited to dive into the story behind the movement and the person powering it. So, Joe, if you could please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey in getting involved with Annapolis Pride.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, where do I start? I don't even know sometimes, but I mean, I'm from the area. I did not grow up in Annapolis directly, but I grew up in Pasadena, so not too far away from here. And, you know, I think from a very young age, I knew I was different than a lot of the people that I grew up with. And so for me, I think one of the reasons why I am so passionate about the work that I do is because, you know, I grew up in a community that didn't like people that were different than them in a variety of ways. You know, I was one of the only people of color in that community, one of the only well, I wasn't out at the time, but like I knew I was different, you know, like different children than some of the other people. And I always joke, there's a picture of me probably when I was like 5 years old at daycare in like a pink dress. And so like from a very young age, I think people knew that I was different. And so by the time I was in high school, and I went to North County High School, I was in the STEM program, I still was not out. There were a lot of other people that were, and I think for me, I just still felt like it was not a safe place to be. And so one of the things that I am really interested in doing and why I got involved with Pride is just because I wanted to make this community a community that celebrated everybody, you know, no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter who you love, you know, you're able to find a space. And so I joined the board, I think it was in 2020. It was 2020, the first year of the pandemic. I should know that. And I joined because I knew Jeremy Browning, who was the founder of Annapolis Pride. We actually both came from the environmental world, and so I had known him through some of the work. At the time I was working at the Chesapeake Bay Trust, which is also in Annapolis. And so he kind of like pulled me in to get started. And then Jeremy actually he got a job at the State Commission for LGBTQIA+ affairs. So he had to actually step off the board earlier than was expected. And so I took over as chair in early 2021. And it's been a pleasure to lead such an amazing organization since then.
That's great. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about how Annapolis Pride has evolved over the years?
Yeah, so Annapolis Pride, if folks don't know, it was actually started thanks to the current mayor of Annapolis. And so, you know, Jeremy and some of the other founders got together in 2018 and asked the mayor to proclaim June as Pride Month. And he was willing to do that. So he did that. And in 2018, in that proclamation, he said that Annapolis would hold its first Pride Parade the next year in 2019. And so it was sort of like, cool, thanks for doing this, and now we have work to do. And so they started, you know, the organization then, and really it was about celebrating the community. And I think it was at a time where there was some changes happening. You know, this was during the first Trump administration. I think we were starting to get to the end of that and seeing, you know, there's potential for change. Like, let's celebrate, let's bring the community together. And so, you know, when Annapolis Pride first started, the Parade and Festival was one of the biggest events, but Jeremy and then somebody else who actually he's on the board again, we got him to come back, Eric Lund. They did a lot of events around the community. They showed up and tabled and just said, hey, we're Annapolis Pride. We're going to have our first Pride Parade next year. Come out and support us. And so, you know, when I think of how it started, it really was around a parade and festival, and it was around visibility. And I think one of the amazing things is that because of that, we've been able to grow so much in the last couple of years. We've really done a lot more advocacy work. We're out in the community more. We're coordinating with a lot of elected officials around what the community needs. we're really working on education, so education for allies to the community, but also bringing the community together and talking about important issues. And, we've had conversations with our local police department, and obviously, like, when you think about the modern day Pride movement, it was started from a riot, and police were beating trans people of color in particular, and so there's a rocky history there that, it's not that way across the entire country, but there's a lot of distrust, and so we've been able to have a lot of really interesting evolutions and conversations as we've grown. And now I would say we have one of the biggest events in Annapolis, which is our parade and festival. And so that at its core has grown a lot. And all of our other services that we offer to the community have also expanded and grown. And I really do think somebody else who's on our board, or she was on the board, she was a founding board member, Mariah Davis, she always says, like, Annapolis Pride has clout. Like, y'all have done a lot of work. Everybody knows you. And so we really try to leverage the connections that we have in the community to keep making meaningful change, which is really awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, it's true. So you kind of touched on it, the evolution of coming from a proclamation to a Pride parade, and then you attached the festival to it. What's something you wish people knew about the work behind the scenes to pull all that together?
Yeah, I don't think people understand how much time it takes. Our board for a very long time has been all volunteer. We were able to hire an organization assistant recently, and she's part-time, and she works very hard also. And one of the things that I've been doing is just, I've started tracking, like, how much time I'm putting into this, and it really is almost another full-time job. I have a full-time job, or another full-time job, and so I think for us, we do this work because we really care about the community, and it's really hard for a volunteer board to throw events like this. And so one of the things that I encourage people to think about is, how to support us. We are always looking for new volunteers. I can talk more about that at some point as well. But, it's a lot of work, and we're happy to do it because we care about the community. But especially this time of year, I feel like once you hit June, it's just like, there's something every week. But it's cool.
Yeah, awesome.
That's great. You've spoken about the importance of creating safe spaces for queer youth. Can you share with us what young people in the community, our community, are telling you they need?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're seeing right now in the current time that we're living is that there isn't a lot of support, especially at the federal level, and I think people are scared that it's going to start trickling down into communities. And so for young people in particular, we're seeing that even in schools, it's not as safe as it was even, like, how many months are we in? A couple months ago. It's really shifted from the beginning of the year. And even from after the results of the election came in, we have a student member on our board who is a senior in Anne Arundel County High School, in one of the schools in the county. And so I remember the day after the election, he came and he was like, kids were kind of telling me really terrible things the day after the election, like, I don't belong. And they felt empowered to do that because of what's been happening at the federal level. And so I think for us, what we're seeing is that our youth, especially LGBTQ youth, they continue to need to know that they're cared about, that they're loved, that there are people in the community who see them for who they are. And so that's something that we're really focused on. One of the things that we're going to be doing in June for the first time is a teen prom. So that'll be near the end of the month at Art Farm in Annapolis. And part of that is to foster a space where queer youth can come and feel seen and feel safe in their own skin. And we're seeing, unfortunately, that in a variety of ways, those spaces are starting to really change. I think it was probably about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago in Calvert County, which is just south of Anne Arundel County, their school board said, teachers aren't allowed to have safe space stickers in their classrooms anymore. And there's been a lot of concern that even from teachers who care about LGBTQ youth, that, like, those policies might try to be implemented here in Anne Arundel County. And I think because of the way that the current federal administration is sort of, like, trying to use their power to control stuff, that is a very real concern. If you're too loud about supporting this community, like, is your federal funding going to go away? And so one of the things that is always a challenge is trying to make sure that students know that they're seen and heard, but also, like, not drawing too much attention to some of the policies that are currently in place to protect some of those people. So it's such a hard place to be when you're talking about supporting the youth. And then the other thing that I think is really, really important is just mental health resources. We're also seeing some of that change. I mean, the federal government is now going to be defunding the suicide prevention hotline, the 988 number. And so, we know that for a lot of people, those resources are life-saving. And so we want to find ways to make sure that people have the connections that they need. We're really lucky here in Anne Arundel County that, our health department works really hard to make sure that there are resources tailored for our community. And Dr. Toni Gedden, she's on our advisory committee, and she always has really great ideas for how to continue to support people. But I'm really worried that, especially for trans folks, especially for people of color in the community, especially when they're young, they might not see other people who look like them, who are, able to kind of say, you're loved and you're okay who you are. So that's one of the things that I'm concerned about right now, and we're hearing people need more support on.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you.
I just gotta say I love Dr. Gedden.
She's one of the sweetest people ever, and she's so smart.
Yes.
She stays quiet.
And she's so calm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love her. And I know that youth is very important to you. I remember seeing you at an event, and you were talking about your student board member, and we were having a good time, and you said, "Sorry guys, I gotta go." The student board member was a part of a play, I think, and you were like, "We're all going out to support them." I appreciate that about you, Joe.
That's great.
But I'm wondering for you, and you shared earlier about your journey as a youth, is there someone who made you feel safe and seen when you were growing up, and how has that shaped your leadership journey?
Yeah, this is a very personal story I'm going to share, but, I've shared a little bit about my growing up, and I didn't feel, frankly, like most of the places I was in, I was accepted. But the one person who was in my life who I think always knew I was different, but also was accepting of it, was my grandma. And so from a very young age, we had an amazing relationship, and, it was where when she got a little bit older, we actually moved her into where I was living with my parents. And so I would get home from work, and we'd sit outside on her, she had a balcony basically, and we'd just talk for hours, about what was going on, all of the things happening. And I remember, I don't even know how old I was at the time, but I was in high school, and I wanted to get my ears pierced. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get my ears pierced. And I walked in after I got my ears pierced, and she was like, "Oh, so you're officially gay now?" And I was like, "Oh my God." I was not out at the time. I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I just wanted my ears pierced, But we never really talked about it. She unfortunately had cancer, and she got sick very quickly. So we never really had an open conversation about that. But I think in some ways that was her way of saying I know, and it's okay. And so for me, it was having one person who was very close to me, who I felt I could basically share almost anything with. And this was even before I was out. So it wasn't always the conversations that I might have now, but it was knowing that this person loves and cares about me. And so that's one of the things that I try to take to other places as well. I think we do see that youth don't always have supporting families. And so, the student member who's in the coalition, he's very lucky that his family is very supportive, but we also, as a coalition, are let's get together and support him so that he knows, not just his parents, but how many people in the community want to see him be successful. And so, for me, a lot of the times it goes back to my grandma and, how much I know that she loved and cared about me, even if some other people in my family were not as accepting.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, we were just talking about success in your answer, and I think about defining success a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if you'd share your views of where, either in Annapolis or if you want to talk about the greater Anne Arundel County community, where has Annapolis Pride been successful, and where are there still opportunities to improve?
To do things better, yeah. I think one of the things that we have done really well is that we've built a lot of really great relationships in the community. And I think that for us, a lot of that is because, Jeremy, who founded the organization, he was everywhere. He was trying to go to places, he was trying to meet people, and that was sort of a legacy that I've tried to carry on in my time as chair as well. And so we're not just showing up at Pride events, we're also showing up when there are like political people who we know support our community and they need support, we're showing up at Caucus of African American Leader meetings, and we even did a panel together in October to talk about the intersections of our community. And so we really do try to show up as many places as we can to make sure that people know that, we want to work with them. We want to partner together. We want to make a difference. Last year, we had a former board member also who has done a lot of work in the Latino community in particular, especially for trans women in the community. And so we helped her sort of like launch her own, I don't want to say organization because it's not really a full organization, but like mission, which was Orgullo Latino Annapolis. And we helped kind of them throw their first pageant and bring people together. And so really working on those intersectional issues that are faced in our community, I think is something that we have done really well. I think for us, we have a lot of room to grow. I think we really are at the place where we probably need to hire an executive director. I think that communications and frankly, like talking about the work that we do is not something we do super well. I don't think people see how much work happens behind the scenes. Like, I think we are still really known for the parade and festival. And so that's something I think we could do better. And development. We, for the last couple of years, have really struggled to keep people in the development role. And it's been for a variety of reasons. Some people have had personal things going on. And so for us, I think we're really at this point where we need to take it to the next level. And that probably means that we need money to hire, somebody to do that. And so for us, I think communications and like working with the people in the community who really support us are two areas that we definitely could improve. Yeah.
So I guess the question becomes, how can allies and community leaders better support so that you can do those things?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I always say is like, if you want to volunteer, let us know. We have a volunteer listserv for anybody who has kind of come to us and said, hey, I want to get involved. Hey, I want to do something. And so a lot of the success of our organization comes from people who want to do the work. We are an all-volunteer organization. So sometimes people come and say, I have this idea. Can you do it? And a lot of times we need help to do it. We need people who can come in. One of those examples is this Pride prom that we're doing. Eric, who's on our board, his husband is a teacher in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and he's like, we need this space. And he's like, I'll come together, I'll make a planning committee, I'll do the research, I'll find out how much it costs, and he's sort of run with it, and that's why we're able to do it. And so, like, we want to be able to do things that the community is asking us for, but a lot of times we need people who can come in and help kind of make sure that those things actually happen. And so if you have ideas for what you want Pride to do, we definitely want you to get involved.
But come ready to work.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, or even if it's not coming ready to work, it's coming knowing that there's people behind you to help get it done.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I'll say is like, show up at our events. We're doing a bunch of events for Pride Month this year. It's always good to meet new people in the community, and sometimes you never know who you're going to meet and how they're going to be able to like help us. So we're at this point where we're also really thinking about what's next for the community. And I think one of the other things is probably at some point having a community center where people can go and be themselves. And so somebody that we met probably like 4 or 5 years ago, his husband passed away recently, and they're a little bit older. And, when his husband passed away, he was like, hey, we have all of these LGBTQ books, and we really want to donate them to Annapolis Pride so that the community has books that are like tailored for our community available. And so at the time we were sitting there like, we don't really have a way to get all of those books out, but it will be great for when we do have a community center to say, hey, here's a library of like queer books for people to read. And so after kind of some thinking and some talking through it, like, he did decide to donate the books to us. And what we ended up doing is that we were able to at least get that info out to library staff. And so some of the folks at Anne Arundel County Library were able to say, hey, here are these books that Annapolis Pride has. I really want to read them. Like, let's get some of those books. And so we have been able to do some really cool things just because of people who had something that we needed. We also have a rainbow couch right now. It's like painted. That's like ready for a community space. And it's currently sitting in one of our board members' houses, like wrapped up in plastic. But like people have said, hey, I have stuff. I want to give it to you. And we don't have a place yet to put it all, but like we're building that inventory for when it happens. And then obviously, of course, like if people do have money that they want to donate, we're always, looking for that monetary support as well. But I think in the big scheme of things, that is probably the less important. Like we really want people who can come in and help us kind of do some of these things that we care about.
The time.
Yeah, time.
Bring it back to you a little bit. What's the future look like for you, say in 3.5 years? Random number, I know. Or 5-10 years down the road. What's your next chapter?
I mean, for me, my time as the chair of Annapolis Pride is coming to end pretty soon. And so I term out in September of this year. And so I've been thinking a lot about what's next for me. And I don't know that I have all the answers just yet, but there are a couple things that are on my radar. I mean, one, I'm still on the State Commission for LGBTQ Affairs. I was the chair there for the first 2 years, actually, and the commission was established under former Governor Hogan. And so, under the current administration, we've definitely been able to do a lot more with the support of the governor directly. And so I'm going to be involved there. I continue to be involved there. Right now, with one of my other commissioners, I'm chairing the Indigenous Inclusion subcommittee of the commission. And so we're really working on trying to find ways to continue to support some of the Indigenous communities here in Maryland. And that's been a big challenge. I mean, if you think about the history of Indigenous folks in Maryland, especially for people who might have been queer, it was sort of like they also could not exist in the way that they are, because especially, I would say, in a lot of the Eastern tribes, the decision was basically like fall into Christianity as the religion or like be killed, frankly. And so a lot of those longer, I guess, like ties to Christianity still remain in our local Indigenous community. And so I know I have a couple of friends who have really struggled finding accepting places and kind of partnering on that. So I'm going to continue to be pretty involved there. I also hope to continue to be really involved with advocacy work. I think out of all of the work that Annapolis Pride does, advocacy remains one of the most important pieces. And so, we as Pride have hosted legislative receptions in the past. And I think for us, what we're seeing is that a lot of the work around the support that the community needs has to happen in like one-on-one conversations with our leaders. And so that takes a lot of time, that takes a lot of energy. And I've sort of committed to our board that even after I'm not the chair, like I'm happy to help support in those ways, because I want to make sure that, a lot of the work that I'm doing doesn't, dry up, I guess, when I leave the board. And the board has a lot of great people, and like we're still a volunteer organization. And so as a single person in his 20s, like I know that I have more time than a lot of other people on the board to continue to do some of that work. And so I'm going to keep advocating for the community no matter what happens. I'm going to keep showing up in spaces and doing a lot of the work. And I think one of the other things that has come to mind a lot recently is just that we're seeing a lot of really concerning things coming from the federal level. And we know that when things get tough, there can be like a lot of infighting in communities. And so when you're part of a marginalized community and your rights are on the line, it can be really hard to find ways to partner and work together. And so for us, the other thing that I'm really interested in is continuing to find ways to build more inclusive movements for our rights where, everybody is fighting together. Because if we're, fighting some of these systems separately, we're never going to win. We're never going to find the ways to move us forward. And so for me, it continues to be making sure that like queer Latinos and queer immigrants have the right support. And right now, I think there's a lot of people in that space that are very scared about what's going to happen. And, because of my upbringing, I have a lot of privilege that I try to make sure that I'm helping other people in ways that like maybe they wouldn't have been able to do on their own. And so, I think for me, building those intersectional pieces is definitely a place where, like, I'm not going anywhere and I'm going to keep pushing people. And it makes people uncomfortable, but having some of those conversations is how you start to kind of move the needle in a lot of ways.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah. Should we go to the lightning round?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. So sorry. Let's introduce the lightning round first before I ask the question. So the lightning round is where we're going to ask a question and you say the first word or phrase that comes to mind. Or
oh my God. That's stressful. I'm a Libra. I'm bad at decisions.
Sorry.
They're lighthearted questions.
Yeah, they're lighthearted.
Okay.
They're not intense. They're meant to be fun. So what's a book or a movie that changed your perspective?
Ooh, that's a good question. See, now I'm like, oh no, what's the answer to pick? I think for me, one of the books that I think has really helped a lot is a book by Jessica Hernandez, and it's called Fresh Banana Leaves. So it's actually a book.
Sorry, what was the name?
Fresh Banana Leaves.
Okay.
And it's actually a book that talks a lot about, particularly like indigenous struggles in the community. Talks a lot about indigenous science and how that shifted across not just North America, but like Central and South America. And one of the things that it really opens up is it talks a lot about how, frankly, like the United States and some of its companies have been really involved in the political realm in other countries and how that's harmed a lot of the people in those countries. And so for me, it's really made me shift a lot of my perspective around supporting indigenous people, some of the government policies of politics that are in play, and really how to continue to be a better ally for certain communities. So it's a good book. I highly recommend it.
Thank you. Who inspired you to serve your community?
Very similarly, I think of somebody who is also like, I don't know if I shared this, but like I'm from Guatemala. I was adopted as a child, but so I've been on this journey of reconnecting with my culture, but there's an indigenous activist in Guatemala named Rigoberta Menchu, and she is, I think, pretty well known by a lot of people, but she was sort of at the forefront of fighting for indigenous rights and particularly for indigenous women in Guatemala. And so for me, watching people who frankly have had so much not afforded them, who are able to be some of the strongest allies for the community is like really, really awesome. And so she also has a bunch of books that are out if people are interested. But just seeing sort of the bravery, especially from indigenous folks in a country like Guatemala, to say, hey, we're not being treated well. We need you to recognize our rights. Like that is sort of the way that I start thinking about our rights also, is like, we might not have everything, but we're going to stay here and we're going to keep advocating for our communities. So she's really inspirational.
That's great.
Okay. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh my gosh. These are hard questions. I know they're supposed to be like quick questions, but I think for me, I think one of the things is like, just continue to be yourself, like one of the things that I have a mentor, and we've been working together for quite a while, and she continues to push me out of my comfort zone a lot. I think that I'm somebody who I can fall into like trying to like change to like appease other people a little bit. And she's like, no, like be yourself, show up authentically. Don't be afraid of what other people think about you. Like that, especially for someone like me, can really like make me go crazy. And so for me, it's a lot of times just showing up as myself and continue to advocate for what I know needs to be advocated for. And I encourage other people to do that too. I think it's really easy in the world that we live in to like, see what other people are doing and see how they act and, try to change who we are. And like, I think when you're authentically yourself in a lot of spaces, people can see that. And so it's really important.
That's great. All right. This truly is an easy question.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
What is your go-to comfort food after you've had a long day?
Okay. Yeah. I think for that, this is going to be crazy. I love chicken. So like, I would say for me, it's like, either fried chicken or like baked chicken of any kind. I love chicken, but that's a go-to food.
All right. Is there a particular restaurant or do you make it yourself?
If I'm going to a restaurant, if I'm going to like a fast food restaurant, because I'm going to do fast food for right now, it's probably Popeyes, which I don't know. I know there's a big debate around the best fast food. But if you're in Annapolis, I'm really excited because I believe later this summer, Pollo Campero is going to be opening, which is a Guatemalan fast food chicken chain.
Interesting.
And I think that it's like the best chicken. So I'm very excited for that to happen.
Great.
Okay. All right. Last question in the lightning round, at least, right?
Okay.
50 years from now, Annapolis Pride is still going strong.
Okay.
What do you want people to reflect and look back on your role that you played in it?
Okay. So these are not lightning questions. They're so hard. I think for me, I really hope that the legacy that we continue with Pride continues to be the intersectionality in our work that we do. I think that we have a board that continues to really value intersectionality, but I think at the same time, it's really hard for like trans people and queer people of color to like find space, especially in like organizations, frankly in Annapolis, where like a lot of the mainstream is very white and very cisgender, you know? And so I think for me, I really hope that people see a lot of the partnerships that we've created, a lot of the work that we've been doing to deepen engagement in communities, and also like faith-based organizations. We've been doing a lot more work there. And so I think for me, it's, you know, hopefully that this is somebody who helped really deepen relationships with some of these communities to make meaningful change.
Good.
You know, you mentioned something that resonates with me, and that is following the founder of an organization could be really tough because people have a certain expectation of what a founder could do, and then when you're the next generation or the next person in charge, it's a key role, and that you've served very well with taking Annapolis Pride from just being, I don't want to say it was about one person, certainly it was never just that, but it's one person's imagination of where it could be, and then you've taken it on to make it more sustainable. And the mark of a good founder and a good organization is when it can transition from one leader to the next and still survive and thrive. That you've demonstrated with Annapolis Pride.
Yeah.
So kudos to you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely something. It's so interesting. I got coffee with Stuart Pittman recently. He was like, I remember when Jeremy was transitioning, like, nobody knew who was going to take over, and, you know, and we were worried, you know, and he's like, and now here you are, and you're getting ready to leave, and he's like, and now I'm worried again, and I was like, don't worry, like, we're doing a lot right now, we're preparing for the transition, and so, you know, we'll have more to share on that probably in the next couple of months, but it's been an honor to, like, lead the organization for the last couple of years, and I feel like there has been a lot of meaningful change, so I'm excited to see it grow without me, too, you know?
I can appreciate that. We've had a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there a final word that you'd like to leave us on?
Yeah, I mean, I would just remind people that, like, Pride happens all year. It's not just during one month. And so finding ways to support, you know, your friends or your family or anybody who's part of the community, it can happen any time of year. And so, you know, we obviously take our celebrations very seriously in Pride Month, but, you know, we're around all the time. I think right now for a lot of people in the community, it's hearing from people that, like, they support each other, they support queer people. That's really important right now. So, like, if you have your queer friends, check in on them, make sure they're doing okay.
Okay, that's great.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you. And that's another episode.
Yeah.
Community Scoop is brought to you by Naptown Scoop, keeping you connected to what's happening to you in your own backyard.